Everybody, welcome back to the diDNA Dialogue, where we'll be sharing something about the digital advertising industry that's going to impact you, the publisher. My name's Josh, and today we're talking with Erin Blohm with VNN, the Director of Sales and Advertising Operations over there. Erin, to kick us off, can you go ahead and share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Hey, Josh. Thanks for having me. So my name's Erin. I have been with VNN sort of since its infancy. VNN is a communication platform for high schools across the nation. We build out athletic websites and communication tools sort of as the hub of all communication types. So we plug in all different types of partners from all sorts of different industries inside the high school space. And we're sort of the hub communication platform for that. So we're a startup with, I guess, like in its teenage years at this point, really scaling up. I've been with the company for about 8 years, and I've had the privilege of really growing in my career, starting in marketing and sort of growing, touching in sales, and then most recently going into digital ad ops. So it's been a journey, to say the least. It's allowed me to really expand my knowledge base and sort of the breadth of what is the ad industry. So it's been really fun.
That's awesome. And before we dive into the actual strategy for 2020, which I definitely want to hear, especially for VNN and I think your target audience that you guys have been working with,
Yeah.
I would love to hear a little bit more about what you've brought from your past and your history, especially on the sales side,
Sure.
over to VNN, taking 2020 out of the equation. What did you bring over?
Yeah. So I think just generally in sales, right, it's like relationships, and you're trying to sort of navigate taking those relationships and applying them to whatever it is that you're doing at that time. So I've got, like you said, some experience in sales. It's always been technology. So I've had that sort of tech sales background. And so bringing that in has really helped me to be adaptable and sort of listen to the needs of not only our customers, but also our internal people, like what are the things that are going to make us thrive,
Yeah.
especially in 2020, but just generally.
Yeah.
And really be able to listen to that and to pivot accordingly and to make good strategic decisions to help the organization as a whole.
Okay. And that's a pretty good segue into actual strategy. So I know you're talking about strategy for both internal and your customers too, but I think the customer and the client you've been working with on the high school side is pretty unique, especially for this year. So how, I think, did you plan to approach 2020? And I think, how has it changed as the year has gone on?
Yeah. What hasn't changed, right?
Right.
So you're right. We sort of have two customers at VNN. We've got our school side of things, which of course has an athletic director that's behind a school, and they have a bunch of coaches, and the coaches have players, and those players have parents and fans and community members that are rallying behind them. So we've got sort of that side of the business to solve for. That was really interesting when COVID hit, because of course schools stopped and sports stopped
Right.
across the nation, right? So what we thought was, we expected to be a year of growth and, growing our school base and increasing our user count and all of these things, we sort of were stopped like dead in our tracks and had to sort of reanalyze, like, okay, where do we go from here, right? We don't know when sports are going to start back up. And even still, in October, it's quite fragmented, right? You've got some states who are full steam ahead playing sports. That's awesome. Everything's back and like great. We're really excited about that. And then you've got a lot of states who aren't doing anything, or maybe aren't even making a call until early next year or spring of 2021.
Right.
So we've had to be really strategic in sort of the geographic areas where we're focusing on that side of the business. And it really goes hand in hand on the same side for advertising. On each of the high school communication platforms, we've got local brands that advertise and promote their business on the athletic website. And it's a way to support the schools and actually be a fundraising effort for our school side of things too. In addition to local, we've got some regional and national campaigns. And then of course we plug in programmatic advertising when we can to help monetize that side of the business. When COVID hit that side, obviously if sports aren't happening, the traffic on our sites is a lot lower.
Right.
So that really impacted our advertising side of things too. We were able to, with diDNA, like take a step back from our programmatic side for sure and sort of reanalyze, like, now is a really good time to take another look at what our foundation is set up for programmatically and what's the best way to optimize that so that when things do go back to quote unquote normal, whenever that is, or when they do start to get back to some semblancy of normal, okay, cool, we can hit the ground running. We've optimized our CPMs the best way we can. Maybe we've implemented some cool new programmatic spots that are really advantageous to publishers, but also work really well in integrated into our school platform. So that's been really interesting to sort of take a step back and be able to reanalyze priorities and like what's the best thing to do for scale moving forward.
Yeah. So when you say foundation too, do you mean just overall ad strategy? So because you mentioned programmatic and there's a lot of other different ways to do that. What is that what you guys primarily took a look at in terms of foundation?
You know, we primarily from a foundational standpoint, we sort of reanalyzed that side of things. We found that our regional and our national advertisers, our larger, more deeper reach advertisers, weren't impacted as heavily as like the local businesses, right, from COVID, which makes sense. So from that side, we were sort of able to keep going. Of course, we had to make tweaks and adjustments and sort of reanalyze campaign flights and see how we could adjust those and add value where we needed to with lack of traffic. But we also were able to see this sort of like rallying from schools and communities that we've always seen in sports, but never the same way that we've seen it in the era of COVID, because we saw that schools and communities needed to lean on each other and almost have that like morale boost so much more than what they did, than what they've ever needed before.
Right.
And that has been really cool to see and has been really helpful from both sides of the business, I guess excluding programmatic, but from a community standpoint, it's been really cool to see our brands and our schools sort of come together and really be understanding and support each other where we can. Businesses continue to support schools because they know that's how, they keep their communication platform running.
Right.
Schools need communication platforms more than ever right now. They've needed to digitize things more than they've ever needed to do. No touch ticketing, video streaming because there's limited fans in the seats.
Right.
All of these things that, we've never really had to do, or that are nice to haves that have sort of become essentials that advertisers are really fueling. And so it's just been a really cool thing to see, sort of the rallying together and the community support that's come around that.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think as a whole, not even the ad industry, but just, I mean, really the US and the rest of the world, I think coming together and trying to create and really cultivate a sense of community is super important right now. And I think a lot of the publishers that we've talked to try to stress that as much as possible too. So it's really cool to hear that you're seeing that from your client side realistically.
Yeah, absolutely.
So going into 2021, you kind of talked about it. How has 2020 changed the way you're I think planning to approach 2021? I mean, maybe some of the stuff that you've tried this year that you might leave behind.
Yeah. So we've had a couple of big moves on our school side of things that have allowed us, even through COVID, to acquire and partner with a couple of new companies across the US. So one is WPA in Washington. It was a platform where I think almost every school in the state of Washington was using this platform. Mark Martin was the owner of that, and him and his team recently came on with VNN. And that's been a really cool acquisition to see, and sort of expand our partner network in the state of Washington. We just recently announced an acquisition in Wisconsin, for WSN Sports, which is like the representation of prep sports in the state of Wisconsin. Sort of the same idea, right? To be able to be the representation for that state.
Right.
So that's really exciting, and allows us to, like I said, expand a partner network, and also sort of hone in on efforts and
Right.
how do we continue to expand that way, and how do we, from an advertising side, how can we use these new sites, new platforms to get really creative and maybe step outside of our comfort zone, and doing advertising in a way that's not been our standard way of doing advertising historically. So I know diDNA has been really helpful with that. And like, okay, if we have some new properties, right, or if we have some new sites that we can maybe do some experimenting on in a really cool and integrated way, what's the best way to do that? So I think we're sort of looking at that for 2021. And then from, a school side of the business, I think video is going to continue to be really huge. We're investing a lot of development resources in that. Digital ticketing, digital fundraising, that's been a huge part of our business, that we're going to continue to scale up and roll out. So I think, it's been really interesting how COVID has sort of made us have to accelerate a lot of these efforts that we would have loved to accelerate at some point, but it was sort of a matter of when.
Yeah.
And it's sort of forced us to say, like, okay, let's just go for it.
Yeah.
And not even let's go for it, but like, okay, I think we have to go for it, right? Like to really meet the needs of our customers, but also to make like a really big splash in the market. So I think everyone's looking forward to it.
Okay. So you had some of the digital efforts and ideas ready to go. They were kind of already in the playbook, and this year just kind of accelerated that. Is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So I mentioned we're kind of startup-y, right? Like we've got limited resources. We're really scrappy. So we've always had to be really strategic and really careful on like where we put resources and how we grow different aspects of the business.
Right.
So yeah, this has allowed us to like say, okay, we've always wanted to, do live streaming. We've always wanted to do video on our sites. Okay, here we go. Now's the time to do it, right? Like we need live
Right.
streaming more than what we've ever needed it. We got that request from schools as soon as COVID hit, like, hey, is this in your pipeline? And is this something that we can integrate? So, I mean, yeah, we rolled it out. We just rolled it out at the beginning of September. So our development team, did a whole bunch of work on it over the summer, and it was a really cool thing that we were able to roll out in the nick of time.
It's pretty solid timing too. So
Yeah.
working on it during the summertime too, and everybody's out,
Yes, exactly.
which flowed into, I think a lot of schools started remote. So I don't think, and I think the rest of the team also believes that streaming is not going away, virtual events aren't going away, but the other digital efforts that you mentioned, so like the digital tickets, the digital funding, that kind of stuff, did you see a boost in that towards, like, we're stepping into Q4 now, with some schools actually going from remote back to in-person learning, or is it kind of staying the same? What are you seeing on that side?
Yeah. So we've definitely seen a boost in demand for our digital products. I mean, our whole product suite is digital in some capacity,
Mhm.
but those sort of necessities that people are needing, even as they're trickling back to be in person, there's still precautions being taken that weren't taken, prior to March of 2020, right? So
Right.
even if people are back in school, or even if they are allowing, fans in the stands, people still are maybe more skeptical of doing touch ticketing or in-person fundraising, or like in-person workouts, right? Like
Yeah.
all of these things that are getting a whole bunch of people together in a space, and naturally people are a little bit more hesitant of that right now.
Right.
So yeah, I think across the board we've really seen an increase in all of our digital products, and even just our traffic, across the network. We've seen users and page views up, and especially in states where schools are starting to go back, whether that's remote or in person, just because digital online communication has become such an essential in this age right now. So yeah, it's been really interesting, to your point, right? Like we didn't expect that. Like I think we always want our digital products to do well and to continue to thrive, but it's really been like a vitamin versus a painkiller this year.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy, actually. Yeah, so a vitamin and almost really adds to the strategy for the following year,
Yeah.
which is really cool. So you've had a very unique year and a very unique, I think, niche client industry.
Mhm.
What do you think you would share? And this could be your top 2 or 3 pieces of advice for really any publisher trying to navigate the ad industry. I think the rest of this year, and then even for 2021. What would you say?
Yeah. So I think my biggest learning through all of this has been it's a really good time to pause and sort of reanalyze priorities, um, and to sort of prioritize things that maybe you wouldn't have normally done, that might be outside of a comfort zone, or that you may not have had, allocated resources to
Mhm.
do historically, um, but that are going to yield, larger returns than what it would have previously. Um, I think it's been really helpful for us to, like I said, sort of rebuild the structure of our programmatic side of the business so that we can really optimize it in Q4 in 2021. I think if COVID wouldn't have happened, I don't know that we would have had the opportunity to, stop and sort of say, okay, what can we do during this downtime so that we can really capitalize on, when things do come back. So it's sort of allowed me to learn the lesson to like stop and do that more frequently, even when we're not in a global pandemic, right?
Right. Yeah.
Is like, okay, let's pause and take a step back. And I think, as managers and as people in this industry that's so fast paced, it's hard to do that, right? Because you're just going and you're adapting and you're taking in all this new information. So I hope to do that more often, like quarterly, to stop and sort of take a look in a 30,000-foot view of sort of what's going on and balance that with the nitty gritty grind out of the day,
Yeah.
and sort of strategize that and really have a good whole big picture of how we can continue to thrive in the market and scale our business and implement products that are great for both sides of our business, the ad and the school side.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think you guys have been really good with taking action, at least being on our side and moving forward despite everything going on. But it's really encouraging and a good lesson for, I think, everybody to hear what you're saying. Essentially, whatever happens, pandemic or not,
Mhm.
pump the brakes, take a look at the strategy, the foundation, make sure everything's there, and then take action. Because you guys already have the action part, but it's very cool that behind the scenes you guys are essentially really just taking a look before you make very quick and massive action. And of course, that could be tied to the startup size, being able to be nimble. Um,
Right.
but that's awesome.
Great. Thanks.
Now, if anybody wants to find you, of course, on social, both you and then, of course, VNN, what's the easiest way for somebody to get connected?
Yeah. So we're at vnnsports.net. And you can find us on all social channels, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Um, there's always contact information there, so it's a great way to reach out to us. You can also reach out from an ad side of things to ads@vnnsports.net, and that's a great way to get a hold of us from the advertising side of things. I'm always poking around our social media, so you can probably find me like that way, but you can also find me on LinkedIn, or my email is Erin@vnnsports.net.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Erin. Guys, thank you for jumping in for this diDNA dialogue. I hope you have a great rest of your Friday. If you liked this kind of content, go ahead and press like. If you want to see any other great content, go ahead and leave a comment. And of course, any kind of questions you had on this particular video, go ahead and leave a comment as well. Erin, thanks again for jumping on with us.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it.
Yeah.